Hello, and welcome to Sounding Board, a production of Optimist International of Novato. And we have an international show for you today. Our guest, Andrea Morris from New Zealand, has been teaching for 15 years abroad in England, Myanmar, Egypt, India, and South Korea. Her latest project takes her to Afghanistan. When you hear about Afghanistan, you probably think of war, of suicide bombers, the Taliban, and young women and girls forced into marriage against their will. In fact, the country of Afghanistan has been at war for 39 years. The Taliban now rules over one half the country, and tragically, 9 out of 10 young girls and women are forced into marriage against their will. But there are candles in the darkness, and Andrea is lighting one of those candles for young women and girls in Afghanistan. Before I introduce Andrea, a word about Seroptimus of Novato. We are an international organization whose mission is to improve the lives of women and girls through programs leading to social and economic empowerment. I'm Barbara Herwick, and I'll be your moderator today. Andrea, we are so fortunate to have you here. Thank you so much for being here.
Thank you, Barb.
So tell us, how did you get interested in Afghanistan? Where did this start?
Okay, well, I've always been interested, and I've been an advocate for women's development projects, particularly projects that are going to empower women. Also, when I was training to be a teacher 30 years ago, I had the good fortune of being introduced to an Afghan family in New Zealand who had a 6-year-old son whom I tutored English in. So that began the journey of a wonderful relationship with that family. And then about a year ago, a friend introduced me to an Afghan man who's currently living in Japan, and he's become my project partner. Together we talked about how we could help disadvantaged people of Afghanistan. He already has a number of projects in operation. I wanted to come in and do something that was specifically for women, and that also something that I was interested in, which is embroidery and stitching. And so in March of this year, I was lucky enough to be able to go to Afghanistan and actually launch the project with my project partner.
Now, let's just talk about that. As Americans, we would not consider going to Afghanistan, but
right.
As a New Zealander living in South Korea, was that easy to get a visa to go to Afghanistan?
It wasn't easy. I had to go to the consulate in Seoul and actually interview, but I think it was more about them wanting to make sure that I was going to be safe and that I had the networks within the country to keep me safe. So yes, I went ahead and I got the visa, and certainly there was, the diplomat told me that there was a high risk factor, so I registered with my embassy before I went, which I've never done before in all of my international travel. And then once I got there, there was definitely an element of risk. There were certain things that I was not able to do because I was a foreigner, but I felt very well taken care of by my project partner and his family. And overall, it was just a wonderful experience.
Right, and we do have a picture of you with Abdul, and I noticed you're wearing the covering, which you had to wear.
Yes.
At all times.
Yes. So all women are covered there. Some women wear the full burqa, which is a blue garment that covers their face with a piece of mesh going across the face. It wasn't necessary for me to wear that, so I wore a hijab, which is basically a long scarf that covers the entire head, the neck, the shoulders, and the top half of your body. And so that was how I went out each day.
And we have some pictures to show our viewers of Kabul from your hotel room, right?
Yes.
So let's take a minute and show our viewers. So tell us about these pictures that we're seeing.
Okay, so these pictures took place in the city of Kabul. The first one is a view outside of my hotel window. So I stayed in the green zone, which is a very high secure area of the city. There's a lot of soldiers, a lot of checkpoints, a lot of tanks, and also a lot of helicopters flying very low, looking down over the city. There's cameras, and so it's very secure. When you go out, I couldn't actually, it wasn't safe enough to go out and walk around by myself.
Even in the green zone?
No, it was too risky. So I always went out with my project partner and a cousin or two. Sometimes when we ate out at restaurants, you would walk into the restaurant, or maybe if you went to an ATM machine, a bank, some of the hotels there, just places that people go to within the green zones. They would have very high secure barriers in front. So often they would be huge concrete blocks, there would be steel doors, there would be add-ons to the main building. So the soldiers would stand outside of those, and then you go in, you get checked, and then you go into another area. So for example, my hotel was very secure. It had one of these security add-ons, which I passed through. And then once I went through that, I went into the lobby, and then in the lobby, there was another set of steel doors that where soldiers were standing on the other side. So I walked through those doors, and then there were soldiers by the elevator, and that's how people live their lives in the city.
And how were these women chosen? Did you talk about that already, how the women were chosen?
So all the women are known to Abdul. They're either neighbours or they're relatives. So there's 8 in total, and the goal of the project is to bring in more women and expand the group, but we thought that 8 was a manageable number. So there were 2 women that travelled from Jalalabad. They were actually the trainers in the program. So they are talented seam mistresses and embroiderers, and so they taught the other women in the group. So they stayed with relatives in Kabul, and then Abdul had a cousin who also travelled from the village, and so she actually stayed at the family house. And then the other women were either already living in Kabul, they were neighbours, so everybody was known to each other.
And did you get a sense that these women were enthusiastic about doing this project with you?
Definitely. So the project can open up a lot of doors for these women because they are all either sole financial providers for their family or supplementary providers. So the money's really important to give back to the family, to help educate the younger siblings of the family. Also, these women, most of them were around 18 or 19 years old. Only 2 of them had had a high school education. And they want to learn, they want to do well, and they're interested in the outside world. So by launching this project, it's helping them develop their stitching and embroidery skills, and ultimately earning some money for themselves and for their family.
And what did you notice about the lives of these women while you were doing this project?
Right. Well, it was really interesting because I'm a super busy person and I have a busy schedule, and I really had to learn to slow down while I was there. There is a lot of sitting around, and Afghans are very hospitable, so you drink a lot of tea there. I generally did not interact with any male members of the family while I was at the house. So it wasn't until we went out of the house that I was able to meet some of Abdul's male relatives and close family friends, which would not happen if you were an Afghan woman. So I was very appreciative of that. While I was at the house, I was running on Western time, and I realized I just had to give that up because when we said that the training was going to start at 10:30 in the morning, it was more likely 12:30 or 1 o'clock, and then all of the time before that was sitting, drinking tea, talking to the women, showing photographs. And it's because the women have obligations. They have family obligations. So they're the ones that cook. They cook the breakfast, they cook the lunch, they cook the dinner, and they have to get the children ready for school, and there's chores to do. So their day is, in one sense, very busy with domesticated type of chores. But there's also a lot of staying in the house. So there's not a lot of activities where they can get involved in because they're in a type of purdah where they don't go outside of the house unless they're with male members of their family. So the stitching project is perfect because it breaks up that monotony of day-to-day life, and it enables them to get together socially. So when these women came each day, there was a lot of chatter. And in fact, 1 or 2 days into the training, I had to say, hey, stop, we're here for a reason. We've got to get on and learn the tricks of the trade, so to speak. So it's tenfold. It breaks up that monotony. It enables them to socialize with each other. There was a grandmother at the house who she isn't part of the project, but she stays at the house, and she loved to be she loved to be part of the project. She loved to sit in the background and listen to what the girls were saying. And I think it's also important to mention that this is a project where they don't have to go outside of the houses, which is very important. So they would come each day to Abdul's family house. We did the training there, and then in the evenings they would return to their own house and they would stitch by lantern light because the power would go out without fail every single evening. So,
well, let me ask, I have 2 questions. One, how did you communicate with these women, because you don't speak Dari?
Right.
And number 2, you mentioned that the women were 18 and 19 years old. So were they married?
Right. Okay, well, first of all, the communication was difficult because I don't speak Pushto, which is their first language. You just do that whole international thing with gestures and smiles, and I had my phone and I was able to go through and show photos of my family, so the woman loved that. Abdul, my project partner, was wonderful. Although he wasn't there always at the training, he felt that it made some of the other women feel uncomfortable to have a non-relative, a male relative in the room. So he would just come through when we needed some translating done. So if they had a burning question or if I had something that I wanted to say, we'd just call out to him. He would come in the room, he would give the information. But it's really motivated me to learn Dari because I want to keep the project going, and it's just so much easier if you have a common language between you.
Do you want to take a moment and show our viewers some of the stitch work
Yes, okay.
that they've done?
So these are the purses that they made. There's been 2 lots so far. So when I left Afghanistan in March, I took a whole batch with me, and then since then I sold all of those, and then since then they have made a second batch. So there's basically 3 different types of stitching. So there's this traditional Afghan stitching that you can see here with the mirror work and the very fine stitching. And then I also located some beautiful textile squares at the market in Kabul. So we went through those and brought them back, and then the women stitched them onto these bags. And then there's some more contemporary style designs where they just made little flowers and things like that. But my favorite are the traditional Afghan stitching patterns, and next time I go to Afghanistan I want to introduce new designs and new stitching patterns.
Now, tell us about the market and how that worked, because you couldn't get out of your car.
Right. So it was okay for me to walk around the green zone, but I actually took a lot of fabric and materials from India with me because I didn't know what I could source there. I couldn't get everything I needed, so we did go to the market one day in Kabul. It was not in the green zone, so I wasn't able to get out of the car. So I stayed in the car with one of his cousins, and then he and his mother went into the market, and they picked out some fabric and some zips, and then they would bring it back to the car and hold it up and show me and say, is this what you want? And then they would go and purchase it.
Now, why couldn't you get out of the car again?
Just because of the security factor there. There's a lot of kidnapping of foreigners and so on.
Okay. And why is it so important for these women to, I mean, you did mention that they were, it's important for them to get extra money, but is there anything else? I mean, most of the other women in Afghanistan, are they sewing at home anyway?
I'm sure there's a lot of projects going on that are home-based. This is something that they already have a background in. I'd like to add another part to the project. I'm a literacy specialist, as I said before, and I know that the majority of these women in the group do not have a higher education. So I'd also like to start some classes with them. So we have a plan to build a school with a literacy centre attached, and I'm hoping that the women of this project will be the first people to attend the literacy centre.
Very exciting, very exciting. So tell us what happens to these purses now once they're made.
Yes. So the first lot of purses that they made, I was able to bring them back to Korea, which is where I live. And so we had, I had a show at an art gallery with some artist friends of mine. Mine was just one small part of the gallery. We all had our own parts where we sold our own things. The purses and the bags were very popular. Probably about 100 people came. I made $1,000 for the woman that night. Not only did I sell the purses and the bags, but I had also brought back a lot of jewellery from Afghanistan, much like the jewellery that you see me wearing now. And so, of course, people wanted to buy that. And so all of that money went back into the project, and 100% of it went back to the woman. And now we need to be creative and think of new marketing strategies, probably online sales. I'd like to get the purses into small boutiques. So that's the plan for the purses.
Okay, and tell us about your necklace. It's quite a statement.
Right. So this is Kuchi jewellery. Kuchi are a nomadic tribe that live in Afghanistan, and they wear a lot of heavy silver jewellery. So part of the fun when I was in some of these cool little shops in Kabul looking for the textiles such as this one, I was also hunting for jewellery. So I made some personal purchases. Afghanistan's also famous for lapis lazuli, so I bought a lot of lapis lazuli pieces, which was popular with people, and all of that money feeds back into the project.
And how do you get the money from South Korea back to Afghanistan? Do you go through Abdul?
Well, for the first time we did. So when I went to Japan, we made a transaction there, and then he banks it into a personal bank account in Afghanistan, and then the money is distributed to the woman. Next time we do it, if there's any kind of online sales, that will go into a bank account in New Zealand, and then that in turn will be transferred to the bank account in Afghanistan and distributed to the woman.
Okay. So tell us what you need to keep this project going, what about the funding? How are you going to go about this?
Well, we need resources. So I need fabrics and threads and more of these traditional embroidery patterns. We need more sewing machines. So while I was there in March, I purchased 5 sewing machines because some of the women in the group are either sisters or cousins, so they can share. But as we expand the project, we need to obviously provide more materials such as sewing machines and such as the fabric. We probably cannot continue to do the training in the family house, especially if the group expands. So we'll need to rent a place where the women can congregate and we can have the training. And so all of this takes money.
And the government, you feel, is okay with this, or is this risky?
It really has nothing to do with the government. It's just a private project. Yeah, there's a lot of support for it, and we're just targeting women that Abdul that are known to the family at this point.
And what would be the obstacles that you foresee?
Well, the obstacles are the fact that it's not easy to go to Afghanistan, and since I went in March, the security situation has deteriorated rapidly. So as of now, I cannot go. So it's keeping it going and keeping the communication going, because I'm the one that initiates the designs and so on, and so all that has to be communicated with Abdul, and then Abdul has to communicate it to the women, and not all the women live in Kabul, so they're all spread out. Most of these designs are their own designs, and I would like to streamline it a little bit more and give a specific design and really up the quality of the work. So the communication piece is a challenge.
Now, do they have cell phones? the women?
Yes, they all have cell phones, but the problem is that none of them speak or read and write in English, so I can't communicate with them that way.
But could you send pictures to
Yes, definitely.
So,
and in fact, this purse here is modelled on a picture that I sent, yes.
So they are comfortable giving you their email addresses and exchanging emails?
Everything's gone through my project partner. I haven't had direct contact with them, but I'm hoping that as my relationship with them grows, I get to know them better, they get to know me better, there's more trust. Hopefully they'll learn a little bit of English, I'll learn some Dari, and it'll be a lot smoother.
Right. Now, you mentioned to me earlier, and we're running out of time, but that when they came to the sewing project, they were all covered completely. And then tell us about that. When they sat down, then they could uncover.
Well, when women go outside in Afghanistan, they need to be covered. And so every house has an outdoor, a very high fence with a gate. And so you knock on the gate and you wait to be received at the gate. You would never walk into the compound and knock on the front door. So the very first morning of the training, the women came to the house and they came in a line, and the two older women were at the front of the line and they were wearing their full blue burqas, and then the woman of the house greeted them at the front door of the house, and then they took their burqas off. But you'll notice in the pictures that they're all completely covered, and it's because it's their custom. They don't like to show their face to the public or to people that are not related to them.
Right. And we have a few minutes of video showing the women.
Yes.
So we'll show that now with the transcript.
تاسو خپل ځان باره کې راته ووایئ، ځانونه معرفي کړئ. اول تاسو.
نوم بسم الله الرحمن الرحیم. نوم مې اسرا ده. د 19 کال عمر لرم. همدارنګه په کورنۍ کې د مور سره مې پلار سره مې سره د 5 ورونو ژوند کوم.
تعلیم مو څومره ده؟
تعلیم مکتب مې خلاص کړی.
ډېر ښه. تاسو خپل ځان معرفي کړئ.
نوم مې سحر ده. د 18 کلنه یم. عمر مې ده
څومره ورونه او خویندې یې؟ فامیل کې
مور مې ده، پلار مې ده، 3 ورونه مې دي، 2 خویندې مې کور کې.
عمر او تعلیم مو څومره ده؟
تعلیم مې تر 9 صنفه پورې مې
ډېر ښه. تاسو لپاره تاسو د خپل روزمره ژوند باره کې راته ووایئ، لکه هره ورځ تاسو څه کوئ او خپله ورځ څنګه تېروئ؟ اول تاسو.
روزمره لکه څنګه چې په یو اسلامي مملکت کې سهار وخته چې له خوبه چې کېږي نو مخکې له هر څه نه اودس کوي، خپل لمونځ کوي او وروسته له لمانځه نه خپل کورني کارونو ته دوام ورکوي، لکه سهار وخته چای تیاروي، چای جارو کوي، خپل کور کې له خپل خویندو ورونو سره او مور سره کومک.
ډېر ښه. تاسو ووایئ.
سهار وخته له خوبه جګ شو، مونځ اودس کوو، بیا مور سره مې همدا د کور کومک کوم، چای هغې ورونه مې خویندې مې دي.
ډېر ښه، ډېر ښه. بل سوال دا ده چې تاسو لپاره په ژوند کې لوی مشکل څه ده؟ اول تاسو.
ژوند کې تر ټولو لوی مشکل د موږ په هیواد کې امنیت ده، چې امنیت نشته. همدا چې په مملکت کې مو امنیت راسي نو موږ کولی شو خپل زده کړو ته دوام ورکړو، او همدارنګه سره د موږ ټول خویندې ورونه په هیواد کې مشکل یې همدا ناامنیتي ده، نارامي ده. کله چې په مملکت کې مو ارامي راشي، دا د هر چا آرزو ده، زموږ هم همدا آرزو ده چې په مملکت کې مو ارامي راشي، سره د موږ ټول خویندې ورونه په ارامي کې هم خپل زده کړې وکړي او هم خپل روزمره کارونو ته دوام ورکړي.
تاسو لپاره لوی مشکل څه ده؟
زه به د خپله درس وایم، کلي کې اوسېږو، هغه باید جنګ او هغه کرار شي.
اقتصادي مشکلات لرئ؟ اقتصادي مشکلات لرئ؟ بله پوښتنه دا چې تاسو څه غواړئ وکړئ آینده کې؟ تاسو ارزو څه ده؟
آینده کې خو هر څوک غواړي یوه هیله لري چې هغه به راورداسي. د ما په ژوند کې 2 هیلې دي، یو همدا چې خیاطي زده کړم او بل دا چې انجینره شم.
ډېر ښه. تاسو څه ارزو لرئ، څه هیلې لرئ آینده لپاره؟
زه درس وایم معلم هستم همالته او همدا خیاطي و ګلدوزي و
ښه ډېر ډېر او بل دا چې تاسو په نظر باندې دغه پروژه یا دا کار چې موږ شروع کړی ده همدغه خیاطي یا د لاسي صنایعو چې په دې سره به تاسو کار کوئ په دې باندې تاسو په نظر دا به څه فایده تاسو ته ورسوي څه ګټه به تاسو ته ورسوي
شروع خو داسې نه معلومیږي خو وروسته کله چې موږ خپل کارونو ته ادامه ورکړو کولی شو د همدغې کار په ذریعه باندې موږ خپل کورنۍ سره خویندو ورونو سره مرسته وکړو همدارنګه کولی شو د همدغې په ذریعه باندې موږ خپل درسونو ته دوام ورکړو او په پوهنتون کې خپل درسونه ووایو
ډېره تاسو
دا خو
دا لکه دوی چې ویلي تاسو دوی ته دلته که چیرې وایي دا کار مخکې لاړ شي نو کولی شي چې دوی سره کومک وکړي لکه دوی په درس سره دوی کور سره دوی کولی شي دې لارې نه پوهنتون ته لاړ شي تاسو ته به څه ګټه ورسوي که چیرې دا کار ادامه پیدا کړي
زه وایم دا کار ادامه پیدا کړي زه اوس که ګټه وکړم او ورونو سره مې کومک وکړم خویندو سره مې
خپل هم غواړئ بیا سبق ووایي آینده کې
خپل هم سبق ووایم
ښه ډېر مننه
Well, thank you so much for being with us today and giving us such fascinating insights into Afghanistan. And we wish you all the best on this project. I know I do. And you will have a URL site set up under Indiegogo.
Yes.
Do you want to tell us how to find that?
Sure. So I'm currently in the process of setting up an Indiegogo funding site, which you are warmly welcome to contribute to. The name of the project is EJAD, Afghan Women's Stitching and Embroidery Project. We'll also be on Facebook and Instagram.
And how do you spell EJAD, and tell us what that means again?
Okay, so EJAD is EJAAD. It means creativity in Dari.
Okay, great. And thank you to Nevada Community Access TV and to our viewers for watching us today. Thank you so much.